Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, thank you for joining me in this discussion. God has given me fresh revelation, impartation. God has given me the post-quarantine vision for United Believers Community Church. If you're watching this and you're not a member of United Believers Community Church, continue to watch, because I believe that God has given me to give you some steps forward as you create your path forward. Understanding that vision is not cookie cutter. You can't take this vision and place it in your ministry and it fits your paradigm. But I do believe that there are some steps forward in the path forward that you can take, that you must take, in order to lead our churches forward in this post-quarantine strange culture, this strange dimension in time that we now live, preach, and worship in. We've never seen anything like this before. We've worn out that word, but let me use it one more time. These are unprecedented times. There's no manual, there's no script, there's no seminary class that can help us to make it through this. This is going to have to be our ear to the very mouth of God. And God speak to us in our ear. And we believe what we heard in our ear and our heart to move his church forward for his honor and for his glory. Now, before I get into this, let me say this. We don't know what tomorrow holds. We never have we? But we do know who holds tomorrow. We don't know if God's going to allow hundreds of people to come back. We don't know if God's going to shrink ministries down to house-sized churches like they were in the book of Acts. We don't know if God is even going to have a building where people can gather in the future. Anybody who tells you they know, let me tell you, like the prophet said in the valley of dry bones, Lord, only you know this. But I do believe in our don't know, there are some things that we got to know, some things we need to understand as we move the church forward. And so allow me 15 minutes of your time to walk you through how God has spoken his mouth to my ear, and I have set on what I've heard in my ear, now it's in my heart, to share with you about the vision of United Believers Community Church as we move forward. One of my favorite HGTV documentaries that come on, TV series, is called Flip This House. I love to watch Flip This House on HGTV because they take a house that's outdated and transform it to where it's now in time. I mean, when you look at it, it's outdated. It has served its purpose. It has really outlived its time. But through transformation, they take something outdated and bring it in time. They flip the house. I believe that's what God has done in 2020, specifically March 15th, 2020. God flipped the house. There were so many things that the church was doing that was outdated and out of touch that he flipped the house to now to bring us in time, in step, in his will. So I'm not a pastor who's looking forward to running back to the way things were. But I'm a man of God, a pastor who's looking forward to keeping step where God is. And so I want to give you this, and I hope if you're a member of our church that you will embrace this, because this is exactly where your pastor is. Let's go further. So one of the first things I want you to understand right off the bat is that every church is different. In fact, at United Believers Community Church, we church different. We build people. We are going ham for Jesus. H is hunger. A is advocacy. M is mental illness. In fact, before I got to United Believers Community Church, you know what the mantra was? A brand new start. So you got to understand the brand of the ministry that you're in. That's why McDonald's is not concerned that Burger King is across the street. Why? Put in that chat box why you think McDonald's is not concerned about Burger King. They both serve all meat patties. They both have mustard and ketchup and pickles and onions and lettuce. But why isn't McDonald's concerned that Burger King is across the street? Can I go further? Chick-fil-A is not concerned that Raising Cane's is across the street. Both of them sell chicken, but Chick-fil-A is not concerned that Raising Cane's is across the street. Why? Because they believe in their brand. And so that's what I want to walk you through. I want to walk you through why we've got to believe in the brand that God has given our ministry so that we together can walk together and find the path forward that God is leading us in. So let me give you my process of thought. Somebody asked, what's in Pastor Edwards' head? What are you thinking, Pastor? The world has reset. The church must reboot. This is bigger than getting people back into the building. That is not what this is. This is about getting them back into the building so that the ministry and meaningful interaction can empower them to remain outside the building by sending them out into the world to make a positive, noticeable difference. May I use these terms, noticeable and sustainable difference. I don't have to convince you. You are living in the same broken world that I'm living in. This world needs engagement and connection. Those are two terms I hope you write down. The world needs engagement and connection more so than ever before. We have always believed, when I say we, I speak of the church universal, but let me speak in terms of the church specific, the black church. And I don't apologize for using that term, a church that's comprised of dominant African Americans, predominantly the membership is made up of African Americans, the black church. We've always understood that missions is around the corner and down the street as much as it is overseas. The black church has always believed in the Acts 1:8 model that mission must begin first in your Samaria, in your Jerusalem. It begins first in your Jerusalem, then into Samaria, and then into Judea, and then into the uttermost parts of the world. We've always understood it must start in your Jerusalem first, in your backyard. Leave our church and go around the corner, you'll find one of the most impoverished schools in the whole Kansas City area. Mission is around the corner. Mission is down the street as much as it is overseas. And I'm not knocking overseas mission and ministry. I believe in that and I embrace that. But I also believe that mission must start at home. And so everything we do in United Believers Community Church, every event we have will not just be a social club environment. It won't be for church members only. Let's stop saying that. Everything we should do, every event we have, I'm going to ask 4 questions. Are there friends in there? Are there relatives of yours in there? Are there associates of yours in there? Did you invite any of your neighbors? Are they in there? Every event we have must have a community engagement connection focus. Friends should be there. Relatives should be in there. Associates should be in there. Neighbors should be in there. Even if it's a student ministry event that we're having, Friends of those students should be in there. Relatives of those students should be in there. Associates, if they're working small jobs, should be in there. The neighborhood kids they go to school with should be in there. That's why the church is important. And that's why I want to have this discussion with you. Let's go further. So the introduction is that God has called us to take the church forward. God has called us to take the church onward. God has not called us to take the church backwards. 60 years ago, churches had what was called auxiliaries, departmentalized, siloed into function. 20 years ago, they moved into what's called ministries. Still compartmentalized, departmentalized, siloed. Basically took off if it was deacon board, they basically put masking tape on top of board and wrote ministry on top of it. So some churches still operated like a board, but they called it a deacon ministry. And I believe God flipped the house on that. Where I believe God is now is he's calling the church back to Matthew 28, 19 and 20. And that's calling us to be ambassadors. Ambassadors get their orders in a foreign land, in a safe community, and give instructions in a foreign land. Ambassadors have a safe community where they get their instructions. They're empowered there, but they change the world in a foreign place. And I believe that's what God is calling United Believers to do. Ambassadors is a post-quarantine COVID world solution as it relates to effective Christian kingdom dynamics and the biblical mandate of Matthew 28, 19 and 20. We need ambassadors. We need people to enlist in serving God beyond the walls of the church. Let me give you something you need to understand. You're going to have a very hard time in this post-church world getting people to church. That old saying, you say, come go to church with me, is not as effective as it was 20 years ago. But when they see you operating in their sphere, serving in their community, helping a cause that you don't benefit from, that's what's going to draw them to church. When they see you volunteering and sacrificing your time to feed the homeless or shelter the houseless, when they see you out contributing in the marketplace or striking up conversation in the grocery store that impacts their life and encourages them in some way, that's what's going to get them to church. Not, hey, my church starts in the morning at such time, come on and go with me. People want to see you do the gospel before they want to hear you preach the gospel or sing the gospel. And church, I'm telling you, ambassadors is going to be the answer to the world's big question. Let's go further. So what have we seen? We have seen during the COVID-19 pandemic, people willing to join church. We've seen people join. In fact, we have more people join our church online than in person. We've seen people engage with studies or sermons even though they don't live in the same city as the church ministry. We have people almost in all 50 states watch our services every Sunday or through the week. We have some people who watch our Sunday service on Tuesday. We have some people who watch the Bible studies on Thursday or Friday, not just when they come on live. Digitally, churches can witness, teach spiritual principles, engage in social and study groups, solicit financial contributions. The virtual space has opened a new window of gospel opportunity that the church must seize in this hour. To serve this present age, this is the calling that God is calling us to fulfill. So we just got to do more than just live stream the services, plug up the cameras and turn on the lights and shoot the scene. We've got to begin to think, how do I engage the metaverse? How do I engage virtual reality? How do I step into social streams? How do I make God's platform the dominant platform on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram? That's what God is calling us to do. That's who God is calling us to be. The gospel has taken off faster in the last 2 years than I'd say in the last 400 years because of digital space. So think about this. Think about the timeline of our church. For those of you who are watching, this might bore you, but I want to give our church the timeline of the DNA of our church. In 1997, through the founding pastor, Pastor Greg Kirby, those few bands of followers who, in fact, carry our church today, said they want a brand new start. Man, I don't know if they knew what they were saying, but I bet they see it now. And before I even leap into the timeline, United Believers, we've had every brand new start almost a church can have. And so that 20, 25, 30, back in 1997, y'all spoke something amazing into existence. Hey, so Pastor Edwards comes in 2000 and presents this prospectus, a vision for the future. The church embraces it, and as one member says, we hit the ground running. In 2011, just kind of walk us through, we become one church, two campuses. In fact, we were really one church, three campuses. We just didn't operate on one, but we still owned it. In 2011, we come up with a new concept. We build people. We start seeing that our assignment is not to build buildings, but to build God's people. We rolled that into 2019. And you start hearing new terminology. We church different. Man, we didn't know what that meant. We start saying going ham in 2019. We start saying that we saw the vision that God was giving our church path forward in 2019. I want you to remember this. This is before the pandemic. Hear this. We said the three major areas that God would lead our church is going to be in hunger, advocating for children, and mental health. We said that in 2019, and lo and behold, 2020, the coronavirus comes. And may I submit to you the three major items that are affecting our world is hunger, advocating for what is right, and mental health. So I know for a fact that God's hand is on this ministry. My question is if God's hand is on this ministry, do you believe that God's word for this ministry is in your heart so that we can do what God has called us to do, become ambassadors for him? So how does this work, Paz? Let me give you the church rebooted in 3 simple statements. We church different. You won't see a big push to do ministry like it was. But now let's meet God where he is. We're going to do what's called event-driven ministry. Event-driven ministry is really effective because it's going to force you to invite your friends, relatives, associates, neighbors to these events. We're not going to silo off our ministry any longer. They're going to be event-driven activities. We're going to start slow and move methodically. We're going to have men events and women events and family events and student events. We're going to start slow. Notice I said student events. Student events is not babies and toddlers and elementary and junior high. We want to bless students. So I'm going to be looking for a student event ambassador to help us collect all of the schools that our students attend. And how do we help our students engage their friends, relatives, associates, neighbors in those environments? The same we're going to do for men, the same that we're going to do for women, the same we're going to do for families. You'll be challenged to come to in-person worship on Sundays, to be encouraged and empowered. But then we're not going to stay siloed in the church. We're not going to be having thousands of meetings in the church like we used to. No. Well, I want to encourage you and empower you on Sunday morning so you can get back out there in the community to serve and to make a noticeable and sustainable difference. And not always be called to a bunch of weekly church meetings. No. And then thirdly, allow Sundays to be the time we come together and use the power of social media, cell phones, and human interaction become the way we engage with each other, serve together, grow together throughout the week. It's really that simple. And it's really the most COVID way of moving the church forward in a path forward world. So I've got one more thing to ask you, and here it is. Here's what I want to ask you. My ask of you is simple. Give it a chance. I'm going to ask you to embrace it. I'm going to ask you to become passionate about it. I'm going to ask you to think about identifying the it that God wants you to do in your purpose in life. Then once you find it, I'm going to ask you to be timely with it. And if I could add one more to it, I'm going to ask you to invest in it, to contribute, to donate, to help underwrite, finance the work that God is calling our ministry to do. I wish I had more. I wish this was some huge revelation, some big eye-opening experience where you would say, man, Pastor just showed us the path forward. We don't know. We don't know. But we can't sit still either. And I believe God is calling us to take smart spiritual steps forward as he shows us and reveals his will to us as we take those steps forward. Much like the children of Israel, when Joshua was leading them, Moses had died, remember? And God said, just put your feet in the water, take the step forward, and I'm going to show you my great power. That's where I believe God is doing right now that he has flipped the house. So I hope that you'll give this a chance, because I know I've heard from the mouth of God to my ear, to my heart, to share with you and you and you over there. And if you'll walk with me, we'll sit back a few years later and say, if it had not been for the Lord who was on our side, where would we have been? Until we have more dialogue and discussion, thank you for watching. God bless you and God